I spend a lot of time talking about myself. I will show you some stuff in Excel. We're basically going to work through a business scenario where we have a budget and we have actual expenses against that budget, and we record and track variances against the budget. In fact, let me show you where we're going to go. Sorry. I better sit down so I can follow the mouse.
Not sure why it's turning blue on that. Just ignore that.
You see that okay? Looks a lot better on this screen.
Can we talk a little louder? Where unfortunately we've got a group behind us.
Yes.
Thanks.
So the application that we're going to build here actually has three components to it. It has a dashboard, and that's the graphic component, and that's what you're seeing here. There are three charts on it. We also have, then feeding that, we have kind of summary information. In a dashboard, you typically will have three levels, although every one is different. You'll typically have three levels. You'll have the dashboard, which is the highest level of summary. You will have an interim level, which is basically the summary data that feeds the charts, and then you will have and that's what this is. And these are all formulas basically going to the detail information that's stored elsewhere. See, these are pretty much all formulas. And the detail information then is stored here. And this is actually it's on two sheets, the budget and the actual. So we're going to start from scratch, and we'll end up with this as our budget. And most people are familiar with budgets. Some of them have income, some of them only have expenses. This one has income and expenses. And it's a year-long budget, and we've broken it down into months. And then we add down here the total income and the total expenses, and all of this feeds up to the level here. And then the dashboard charts are actually linked to the cells in this summary area. We also have a separate spreadsheet for actuals that we will populate as the year progresses, and that's then the basis for our variance. Actuals versus budget gives us variance, right? Does everyone understand? Is everyone familiar with budgets as a concept? You guys work a lot with budgets here, don't you? Yeah. So a budget is, in theory, it's fixed. You set it in the beginning of the year or a couple of months before the beginning of the year, and then you track against it all year long. Okay, so that's the basic challenge that we have, the basic business problem that we're solving. So I'm going to walk you through this, and I'm going to do some of it purposely slow and some of it purposely fast to balance it out and get done in an hour. I set the alarm on my phone, which is somewhere back here, to go off at 1:45, at which time I'll pretty much wrap up the lecture part of it and then turn it over to you all for questions and answers for the last 10 minutes or so. My concern is if we do question and answer during the thing, we won't get through it, almost certainly. But if anyone feels strongly, or if there's a consensus in the group that you'd like to have it be interactive through the whole thing, I can be flexible. It's just that then I can't guarantee that we'll actually finish the thing. All right, so we'll go through it. And by the way, I will send you all of the files. There's really nothing in the PowerPoint, but I'll send you the Excel files I'm going to be using. I'll send them to Shelley, and then you can get them from her, if you'd like. Okay, so let me get rid of this for now, and I'm going to start with a new blank workbook. Now, in this version of Excel, you get 3 worksheets when you open a new one, so what I'm going to do is just rename them. And I don't really know what your skill level is here. I've made some assumptions about the audience today, that you're somewhere between beginner and intermediate. So I'm going to cover some stuff that's pretty fundamental and other stuff that's kind of, solidly intermediate stuff. If you don't understand it all, that's probably okay. The purpose of this is not to have you become an expert in any of this at the end of an hour. It's to make you aware of things that you might be interested in that you can go and then work on after the class. And as I said, I'll send you the files. My technique of choice for renaming worksheets is simply to double-click the name and then start typing. So I'll call this one Dashboard, and then I'll double-click on this one, and I'll call this budget, or 2015 budget, I think is what it was, 2015 budget, and I'll double click this one and call it 2015 actuals. Everyone good with that?
Yeah.
Okay, so I've got my worksheets named, and I'm also going to color them just because I can. I'm going to give them each a different color. I'm going to go with a dark blue on my dashboard. I'm going to go with like a reddish color on my budget, and I'm going to go with a kind of greenish color on my actuals. Now, you don't really see the colors until you click on a worksheet or another, and you can see the colors
using the
up there.
right-click key to pull up the colors.
And I was using the right-click technique for that. So I was right-clicking and taking up the shortcut menu. I generally avoid the right-click technique. Thanks for asking that. In my own use of Excel, a lot of people like it. I tend to use keyboard shortcuts when I can, but there aren't any good keyboard shortcuts for changing the color of a worksheet tab, so I right-click in that case. And then to save the workbook, I would just do something like this. I would go File, Save As, and I would go to a file folder and I would give it a name. I'll just call this one Budget 1, and I would save it. And then I've got my name up here and I'm good to go. So now I've got to put some information into this, and what I'm going to do is put in a bunch of information. I'm going to start with the categories here. I'm going to reconstruct what we were looking at earlier. Bear with me for a second. And I'm going to call this category. This is my category column. So all I'm doing now is typing in information into the cells. And I'm going to call this a category type. And then I'm going to do what's called filling a series. I want to have my months across the cells there in row 2. So I'm going to type in Jan 2015 because that's what I want to see there. Right? So I'm going to press Control-Enter, one of my all-time favorite keyboard shortcuts. You may want to make a note of that one if you're serious in getting into shortcuts in Excel. Control-Enter is one of the best. The difference between Control-Enter and Enter is that it does the selection border doesn't move after you enter something into the cell. And that's a good thing because most of the time when I enter something in a cell, I'm going to copy it later, or I want to format it, or I want to fill a series like I'm going to do now, and that requires that I select the cell again. So I like Control-Enter in most situations. You can see that Microsoft thought better of what I entered, and they decided to make it a full date, the 1st of January, up here in the formula bar, and I'll just kind of ignore that. That's just the way it works. And I'm going to drag this across then through December. I think O brings me to December. Yeah, good. Now, but then I realized, I didn't really want it to be Jan-15. I wanted it to be Jan space 2015. So I'm going to override Excel's default behavior here using what's called a custom number format. I'm going to say, well, I don't care what Microsoft wants to do. I want it to look the way I want it to look. So I'm going to press Control-1, which is another very good keyboard shortcut. If you press Control-1, it brings up the appropriate formatting dialog box. If you work in charts at all and you press Control-1 and you have a chart element selected, it'll bring up the dialog box for that chart element. It's kind of a context-sensitive shortcut. So anyway, in this Format Cells dialog box, in the number page here, in the custom category, I can see what the current codes are. This is like an underlying programming language almost that tells Excel how to make the cells, how to make the numbers appear when they're in the cells. And you can see now, this is the preview of the active cell, Jan-15. These are the codes that tell it to do that. I didn't put those in. Microsoft did it for me. So I'm going to select those because it's not what I want, and I'm going to type in, and watch the sample when I do this. The sample now changes to a 1 because a single digit M tells it just show the month as a single digit. If I type another M, it says show the month as 2 digits if necessary with a leading 0, and then the third M will actually put the abbreviation. If I put in a fourth one, it'll spell it out altogether, but that's not what I want to do, so I'll backspace. I want a space between them, and then I'll type in Y, 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 Y. Well, they're not time yet, is it?
No,
I put the wrong time in for the alarm. Has anyone got a watch?
Yeah.
Can you tell me when it's 1:45?
Sure.
Thank you.
Actually, you want to know when it's 11:15?
11:15. I got you.
We
Because
started
we're going
at
to
10:30.
10:30.
10:30 to 11:30.
All right. Before the end of this session, I'll be in the same time zone as you all. But in the meantime, you might have to help me get there. So does everyone see what's happened here? We put in these codes, and by the way, I'm going to really quickly through that. But if I put in only 2 Ys, I get the 2-character representation of the year rather than the 4-year. But anyway, since I had all of these cells selected as a result of doing my series fill, all I have to do here is click OK, and it will apply that formatting to all of them. And that's basically what I wanted to do. Now, I probably should make those cells a little bit wider, but I'll leave that for later. I'll format them later. I also want to have here a formula over in the last column that will be my 12-month total. So I just type in 12-month total and press enter. Total. By the way, if you're really a serious Excel user, it's very important that occasionally you put in, if you don't make them accidentally, that you put in misspellings on purpose. Because if you send an Excel file to someone and everything's spelled correctly, they'll know you're not a real Excel user. So anyway, I try to put in a couple of misspellings as I go here. All right, so now I've got the basic setup here. I might as well format that too, so I'll show you how I do that. Now here's another sequence of keyboard shortcuts that's very important. What I'm going to do is I'm going to use Control, Shift, and then the right arrow key. And that's going to take me from B2 all the way to the end of that row until it finds a blank column. And that's, to me, especially if you have a lot of columns or a lot of rows, that's a quicker way than clicking and dragging with the mouse. So I'm going to go Control, Shift, right arrow. And that Control and Shift with arrow keys, you might want to just make a note of Control, Shift, and arrow keys because you can use them in all sorts of different directions. In fact, if you're serious about putting to use some of the stuff we covered today, you may want to just open a spreadsheet and start doing Control, arrow keys, Control, Shift, arrow keys, all the combinations that you can think of, and watch what it does. It's quite interesting, quite useful. So I've selected the cells there. Now what I want to do is I want to put a top and bottom border on them, just so it looks nice. So I'll find top and bottom border here. And I'm also going to adjust the column widths on some of these. Let's see. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to make the category wider, and I'm going to make category type. Actually, I don't need that to be much wider, so I'm going to wrap text on these as well. So once again, I'm going to select the cells, and I'm going to click Wrap Text, which I think is this one, yeah. And then while I've got them selected, I'm going to center them both vertically and horizontally, because I think it looks better that way. And I'm going to adjust the category type so it looks like that. I'm going to come over here to my 12-month total, and I'm going to make that a little bit wider, so it's 2 lines instead of 3, because I think that looks better. Let me zoom out for just a second here. So you can't really see that well, but you get the idea, right? Okay. All right, so now I'm going to kind of fast forward here. I'm going to show you my typing skills. I'm going to have to go back to, we're going to pretend that I'm typing in columns B and C, even though I'm really not. So I'm going to come over here. I'm going to go to my budget. Actually, I could do it from either worksheet. I'm going to go to my budget, and I'm just going to copy these guys. Here's another thing. If I select those 2 top cells and do Control Shift down arrow, it'll select everything in those 2 columns. And then I just do Control C to copy those, and I know they're copied to the clipboard because I can see the marching ants there. Then I go back to my, actually to my other worksheet, the one in progress. And now again, we're pretending that I'm typing this in. And I'll just do Control V, and now you can see I'm a very fast typist. I've got those in, right? Okay, and now the next step would be to put in the numbers. And I'll go ahead and do that once again by just switching back. And here what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the first number cell that I want, and I'm going to do Control Shift right arrow, but that actually takes me further than I want to go. So I'm going to let go of the Control key, holding down the Shift key. I'm going to tap the right arrow, the left arrow key to contract the size of the selection border, and then I'm going to do Control Shift down arrow a couple of times here. to get all of my numeric cells. Those are my constant cells. I'm going to do Control Copy. I'm going to switch back to my other workbook, and I'm going to Control V to paste those in. Is this making sense? Mm-hmm. All right. Does everybody already know how to do all this? Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. So now let's do a formula. And I want to show you a couple of things about formulas here. What I want is a formula that will copy these things across. When I zoom out, you can't see everything good, so I'll zoom back out. So there are a couple of ways to do formulas that copy cells across. For example, this one, you might argue that the easiest way to do that is use AutoSum. Probably some of you use AutoSum, right? If I double-click that, it'll put a formula in there. As you can see, it sums from D3 to O3, which is good. Problem with that AutoSum is, and one of the reasons I rarely use it, is that if you don't have all the cells populated that you want to include in the formula, and you double-click the AutoSum button, you'll see that I get a very different formula here. By the way, if you double-click a cell after it has a formula in it, it will show you the formula, and it'll kind of color-code the cells, showing you what it's including. So this sum, as opposed to what this one did, which included 12 cells in the sum argument, this one only includes 1. So if I were not paying attention and I copied this formula down, I would have very wrong information here. So my preferred technique of dealing with that is to just type in the formula. It doesn't really take much longer to do it. So I go equals sum, and I use the formula autocomplete list, which you can see there is showing me sum at the top now. I'll press the tab key to bring that into my formula, open the parentheses for my function arguments. Then I'll just come over here and drag my cells across. And I'll close the arguments on my function. Again, I'm going to press Control-Enter because I want to copy that formula afterwards. Then I'll just drag the formula down until I include all of the rows that I want. Is everyone familiar with dragging the formulas to copy them? Yep. This is called the fill handle, the little square in the bottom right-hand corner. And if you activate it and drag, you will get the formulas to be copied. Okay, so now what I want to do is add my formulas down here at the bottom. Actually, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to copy this stuff all into the actuals area. So I'm going to take a copy of this entire thing because I have a blank page here for actuals. And everything except the numbers Did I just go to the wrong worksheet? Is I working in this worksheet?
I think you're on the dashboard tab when you're doing your first work.
The first one.
Back to your Excel one.
Budget one on dashboard.
Well, that's not good. Okay, so I'll have to correct 2 errors. Did you all know I was doing that?
Yeah.
Okay, well, thanks for telling me. All right, so no big deal. Here's what I'm going to do. I'll just do it twice. So all I have to do is, what I want to do is select the entire region of cells here. And I'm going to cut them this time. Actually, this is what I intend to do. I'm going to cut these cells rather than copying them. And then I'm going to paste them into both of these worksheets. And then for actuals, though, I'm going to remove the numbers, because everything except the numbers is going to be the same for budget and actual. So to select the current region, which is any group of cells that's bound by a blank rows and columns, and or the beginning of the file, I can select by using the Control * keyboard shortcut. And if you don't have a numeric keyboard, that would be Control-Shift-8. And that it sort of does what that Control-Shift right down and up and left arrows do. It selects all of the cells in that region. And from there, I can copy them. Actually, from here, I'm going to cut, so I'll do Control-X. Then I'll move over to the budget, and I'll show you a common problem that people have. I'm going to put them in the same location. If I just do Control-V here, I get something that's workable, but notice that my column widths aren't right. Yeah? So I'm going to undo that, and I'm going to do this in a slightly different way. Instead of doing just a Control-V to paste, I'm going to come up here to the Home tab and click the bottom half of the Paste button and use a Paste Special operation, except That unloaded my clipboard. Let's see, I've got them in the clipboard. Budget. I want to go to paste special. It's not letting me.
Right.
I'm going to use paste special. Mm-hmm. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to use this operation, which is the paste, but keep the column widths. And now when I've pasted it in, the column widths remain exactly as they were. So now if I come over to the 2015 actuals, I can use that again. I'll just do paste special column widths, and now I've got the information the way I wanted it. My dashboard now should have been cleared, but it wasn't because I had to go back and get it again. Okay. So everyone see what I did there? All right, so now what I want to do is I want to select all of the cells in this worksheet that have numbers in them. In fact, I want number constants. I don't want the formulas over here, and I don't want the text here. I just want the constants here. So what I'm going to do is select numbers, and what I'm going to do is use what's called the go to special command. So I'm going to click on find and select. I'm going to click go to special, and I'm going to tell it to select constants but only numbers. This is a go to special command. So no matter where I am in this worksheet, it's going to select only numbers. So I'll click OK here, and you can see that it's now selecting only those values that have numbers in them. But then when I do that, I see, well, gee, my dates are considered numbers, so that may not be what I want to do after all. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to click here, and I'm going to go down to the December number. I'm going to shift click, a different technique, to select all of those cells. I can't use control asterisk here because there are a lot of cells that I want to exclude, and I also want to exclude the formulas in the 12-month total. So now that I'm here, I'll just press the delete key to clear them. Now my actuals are poised to have real information put in them, and my formulas will already be there. Right? Okay, so I'm going to fast forward here a little bit to a couple of stages on in our application construction.
Question.
Yes.
You left the cells along the border blank for the purposes of using your shortcuts. Is that?
I leave it that way just out of habit. Good question, but I tend to leave a blank row and a blank column, and there's no technical reason for doing that other than sometimes I want to put something there and I just do it. Purely an aesthetic kind of personal customization question. Okay. So I want to show you the SUMIF-S function, which is a little bit more advanced than the rest of the stuff we've covered. So I'm going to switch files here, and let me just close this one. And okay, so this is basically the stuff we've already done, except that I've put in some actuals. We can pretend that I typed those in. What I'm going to do now is type in a formula. Formula's down here at the bottom that will sum only those numbers that will give me income and then expenses. So I want to have here, I want to have here a subtotal or a line for total income and one for total expenses. So I could, of course, do sum and then just select these cells to get my income, and then do sum again and just select these cells. But then if I sorted my data set or if I inserted additional rows or did things, it would be problematic. So what I'm going to do, in addition to zooming out a little, is it acceptable to zoom out like that so we can see a little bit more of the big picture? What I'm going to do is use the SUMIF-S function to say, I want to sum these values, but only if, in this line, in this cell, only if what's in the category type column is equal to income. And then I'll put a similar formula down here, and it'll be the same. I want to sum all of the values that are in here, but only if the category type is expenses. Has anyone used the SUMIF function before? That alone might be worth the price of admission today. I'm also going to use the function arguments dialog box, which is kind of like training wheels for functions that you may not be familiar with. So I'm going to start typing. I'm going to go equals, because all formulas begin with equals. And I'm going to type in SUM, and I'll get the formula autocomplete list that lists the function names there. And I want to just tap the down arrow key here to get down to SUMIF S. And then I'll press the tab key to bring that into my formula. And then I'm going to press Control A for arguments. And that'll bring up this dialog box, which if you work with functions, and especially if you struggle with functions, you'll find this thing very useful. This will give you the name of the function, an explanation of what the function does, and it'll give you an explanation of each of the function's arguments, which are the things that are between the parentheses. So we'll populate our function arguments now using this dialog box. So the sum range, very simply, is what are the actual cells that I'm going to sum? Well, for now, it's January 2015. So I'm going to click on the first cell and just drag down to the last cell. When I let that go, my function argument will be populated, right? Okay, now I'm also going to then tell it what the criteria range is. And the way the SUMIF function works is it has, after the sum range, there are criteria range pairs. Criteria pairs. So I have to tell it, what am I going to check to see whether or not I'm going to sum the numbers in this sum range? And given what I said earlier, what do you think the answer to that question is going to be?
Category type.
Yeah, so I'll come over here and I'll click and drag down so that now it's these cells in category type. That's what I'm going to look at in order to determine whether or not I include a value in my formula. Now I'm going to do another thing here because I want to be able to copy this formula across through all the months without having to go back and change the formula. So I don't want, when I copy it across, I don't want the C in that argument to change to a D and to an E and so on and so forth. So I'm going to tap the function key F4 here, and it'll put the little dollar signs in front of the C and the 3. Anyone use absolute references? So if I tap the F4 key, it'll take care of that for me. And then when I press the tab key to go down to the criteria, here's where I actually just put in the criteria. And I'll put in the criteria as quote equals expenses. Let me just check one thing. Income on this one. And it's not case sensitive when you do this criteria stuff. So even though it's capital I in the worksheet, it doesn't matter if I have it capitalized or not here. All right, and since I don't have any additional criteria to put in, I'm done. And I'm also getting a return value here. This is what my function is going to return, for 4020. And the formula result formatted will look like this. So I'll click OK here. And let's see, I'll do a quick check here. I'll select the 3 numbers that are in my income category. I'll come down to the status bar and look at the auto-calculate total. So I can see I've got a sum of 4020. So that, for my purposes now, is good enough. I've probably got a formula that's working here, right? Okay, so I'm going to move down one cell now, and I'm going to do the same thing, but for expenses. And if I did this a little bit differently, I could probably even copy the formula down. But I'm going to make the call here that it'll be easier to just redo it. So I'm going to type in again equals sum I, sum if S, and if you want, you can either press Control A or you can click the little insert function command here on the formula bar, which is what I'll do now, and that also brings up the function arguments dialog box. So my sum range is going to be, once again, the cells here from January down, and my criteria range is going to be the income or the category type, and my criteria now is going to be equals expenses. And you do have to, here you do have to spell right, whether you're good at Excel or not. What was that?
David's getting every answer right.
Good for him.
Just wanted to give him props.
So, so I'm going to check this and select the the expenses only. I can see it's 3108, so I'm getting the results that I want, right? All right, so now I'm just going to copy these across using the fill handle again. And it should bring me, let's see, I can go, no, I'm not going to go all the way across. Let's see. So I did something wrong here. So, David. So let's see what we can do here to debug this. If I, I know what I did wrong. Does anyone know? Exactly so. Good catch. All right, so I'm going to double click on this cell so I can see what's going on here, and I'm going to click between the C and the 3 and tap F4, and then go between the C and the 7, and put the dollar signs in there, Control Enter, and now I'll copy across again, and I should be just fine. Voila. So let me just arbitrarily choose one and check it. Here's my expenses for June. I've got 3308, that looks good, and my income for July is 4420. So I'm going to say that those are good enough. How about you? All right. Okay, so now I'm going to fast forward a little bit again. We've got the formulas basically done, and we'll start working on our chart. So we covered filling series, custom number formatting, auto sum or not using auto sum, the function arguments dialog box, sum if s, absolute references, and even the paste special command so far. That's a lot of material in a very short period of time. So let's go to working with our charts. We're going to leave the formulas. We're going to go with formulas already in our dashboard worksheet. So I'm going to close this one and open.
Will we need 12-month totals for the income and expense?
We will. And I'm going to save time. I would probably just copy any two of these and put them down here. And when I open the next file, while I don't be magical, they'll have done that. Let's see. So one of the things that is important for someone who's good at Excel or wants to be good at Excel is attention to detail. That kind of catch. That's a good catch. All right, so let me open the next file here, which will be 2B. All right, so here we've got our formulas. I'll briefly walk through the formulas. This is a date that we put in, and it's going to be referenced by some of our formulas, particularly in the year-to-date formulas. So if I look at these formulas, you can see these are simply links to other parts of the workbook. So what this link says is the formula is equals budget, 2015 budget, which is this worksheet, and then the exclamation point is just saying, I'm done with the worksheet, now I'm going to give you the cell, and it takes us to P30, which is this guy down here, P30, right? So I'm just linking rather than typing the numbers in here. So if I change something in either the actual or the budget expenses, then these cells will update automatically. I don't have to worry about getting out of sync because the formulas keep me in sync. Another set of formulas that are here, and let me walk you through this one just briefly. If I double click on it, it helps you see it. So this is sum if s again, and the sum range is the budget total in row 30, which is one of the cells formulas we just put in, and I'm going to look at the values that are in row 2, and I'm going to compare those values to what's in B3 here, which is 430. And as long as the date or the value that's in row 2 of my budget is less than 430, then it will be included in my sum. Let me just show you what that means. So these values up here, up through here, all of these are less than 430. If I come over here, though, this is not less than 430. So when I change the date in my formulas, change the date in my worksheet here, these formulas will update. Let me show you that. If I just come in here and I put in 530 instead, or 531, so everyone make a note of what the income budget numbers are. When I press enter here, they should change, right? Because they're going out and linking, and the sum if function is calculating based on the number of months. So I'm going to do undo there and get rid of those. All right, and then my incremental formulas here, these are just very simple. They're taking those total rows that we set up earlier and subtracting the the expenses from the income, and then I'm doing basic formulas, differences on those and percentages. And those then will become the basis of my charts. So to put in the charts then, I'm going to, and you could decide you want to put the charts elsewhere, maybe even on another worksheet. I've decided I'm just going to put them on the top of my worksheet. So I'm going to select 30 rows, because that's how many rows I want to insert. I'm just going to select the whole row for 30 rows, because that's the number of rows I want. And then I'm just going to press Control plus sign. And if you don't have a numeric keypad, you'll want to do Control Shift plus sign. And that will simply insert 30 rows above where where the active row was. So now I have a bunch of space here where I can build my charts. Right? Everyone okay with that? All right, so we'll start with the first chart, which will be, it's kind of like a, I forget what I call it. So if you had a charity event and you had a goal and you were trying to meet that goal, and you had a chart showing progress against the goal, what would you call that? This thing. Or here's our big goal. I mean, it's sort of like a thermometer almost in some respects, right?
Barometer.
I think there's a better, yeah.
Barometer.
Yeah, there you go. So it shows the numbers that we have here for our total 12-month budget, or our goal, and then the year-to-date actual. So we'll go down and we'll pluck those numbers out of our formulas in the data set. So I'm going to go, by the way, here's a really neat command that I use a lot. View switch windows. And not only that, but I'm going to, here's another nice little shortcut. Any of the commands that are on the ribbon, which is what this thing is called, can be put on the quick access toolbar, which is what this thing is called. How many of you use the quick access toolbar? Most of you, if you use Excel, you probably use it. The easiest way to put stuff on there, I think, is to just come over to the command you want and right-click, and then click Add to Quick Access Toolbar, and then you have it. And then no matter what tab you're on, you don't have to remember where that command was. You just come here and it shows you the command. In this case, switch windows, so I can go back and forth between open windows. Right? Okay, so to put in my first chart, I'm just going to go, I'm going to select a couple of cells down here at the bottom, which will be, it's my net income, yeah. It's, these guys right here. That's going to be the basis of my chart. So I'm going to go to the Insert tab. I'm going to put in a simple column chart, 2D column chart, and that's what it looks like. I'm going to move that up and just drag the chart around. And I'm going to make it look very different from what it looks here. And the principle that's guiding me here is one that Edward Tufte, who is a professor at Princeton who specializes in visualization of information. It's a concept that he calls chart ink, which is to say, if you don't have to have something on a chart, so you'll waste ink if you print it, don't have it on the chart. So I don't really need this, so I'm going to delete the legend, and I'm going to delete well, I'll leave the title, I guess. I'm going to delete the grid lines, because I don't really need those. Oops, it's the font area. I want the grid lines here. And I'm going to delete the category axis as well, or the value axis as well. Leave me with this. And then I'm going to add a series to this, and that's going to be my, this is my budget number, and I want to add the actual number to show against it. So I'm going to go to the Layout tab for, I'm going to go to the Design tab, and I'm going to select Data. And here I'm going to tell it I want to add a series. So I'm going to click Add, and the series name will be my expenses year-to-date budget. Actually, what I really want is just the values, though. So I'm going to put in down here where it says equals 1, I'm going to click and put in my income year-to-date. No, it's net income year-to-date. Actuals. And then I'm going to click OK. And I'm going to rename this, but actually I should just use the name that was there, so I'm sorry. I'm going to use the chart name, so I'll just come down here and go Net income. I'll change it later. So now I have two net incomes. And if I want to change the category axis labels here, I do. And I do. I'm going to make that year-to-date actual. So no, we're going to leave that alone. I'm just going to take that out. Click OK. And now let's go back and look at our chart. So I'm getting closer to what I wanted, but I still need to label it. So I'm going to put data labels on these so that I don't have to scroll down and look at the numbers. I'll see them here. I'm going to click on one of the series, as it's called in a chart, and then I'm going to go to the Design tab, the Layout tab, and I'm going to add data labels. And I'm going to put them on the outside end. Okay, so I've got on the outside end here, that's the value, and I'm going to do the same thing on this series, data labels, outside end. And now I want to move these together so they look like they did in my original chart, and I'm not taking up all that space. I'm going to go to the Format Series dialog box. Does anyone remember when I said there's a keyboard shortcut that begins with Control for formatting? Control 1 in this case. It'll bring up the appropriate formatting dialog box. And I'm going to change the overlap to be 100%. And I'm going to leave the gap width. Actually, I can change the gap width a little. What's the wrong way? So it looks a little bit better. I do want it to be kind of fat, so I'll leave it like that. And by the way, this is an interesting thing. You can now leave these dialog boxes open if you want to format something else. Come in here and select another item in the chart, and the dialog box will change for you as you do that. In this case, I just want to get rid of that. So close, and then I'll resize this so it looks more or less like I want it to look. There we go. I want it to be a little fatter than that. And I want it to be shorter than that too. Okay, and then to put a title on it, and I want this to be, that would be a hard-coded title, because if I come down here, let's see. Yeah, I can just put the title in manually. What I really wanted to do was show you one that I can put in by linking. So bear with me just a second. I'm going to fast forward again to a little bit further along in our process. Switch windows. Now, I've reached that point. Okay, let me do one other thing, just to show you how we've linked these. The titles, you don't have to type them in. Let's say I don't have a title on this one, year-to-date budget versus actual. I delete that. Now I just come in and I say insert a title. Sorry, on my chart, I go to Layout, Chart Title, above Chart. Now, before I do anything else, I click in the formula bar and type in an equal sign. Then I can scroll down and link that to anything that's in my worksheet cells. In this case, it was the year-to-date budget versus actual variance analysis. So when I click there, it puts a cell reference in it, and when I press Enter, it will now my chart is linked to that. So if I decide later I want to call this just the budget versus actual variance analysis, I can click in the cell, make a change, and because it's linked rather than retyped in the chart, I come up with the change in my chart as well. I stay synchronized from doing it. Okay, so we left out a couple of things, putting in the labels here and the title manually here. The rest of the stuff is pretty much, these other charts are put together in much the same way as these are. There's just more columns because the data set has more columns in it. And with that, I'll turn it over to questions. Yes?
When you were doing 2015 actuals and those summaries at the bottom, total income, I think it was not the budget one, but there was one where you had just done the drag fill, and there were these green warning.
Oh, yeah.
Is there a fast way to deal with those?
Well, you probably know that if you get those, you can click on the little error indicator that comes up and tell it to ignore them.
Yeah.
That's probably the fastest way.
Okay.
Unless, I mean, I almost feel bad showing you this, but if you want to, you can go to Excel Options under Formulas, and you can disable those error checking rules. Do that at your own peril, though. It's better to live, in my opinion, it's better to live with those green triangles and be annoyed by them than it is to not get a message when you really should be getting one.
You have to remove them one at a time.
Beg your pardon?
One at a time, you have to remove it.
The checkbox is here?
No, the individual, if you have 20.
No, if you
remove
have
all at one.
If you have 20 errors, let's see, how can I quickly get an error? Let's say if I do this.
Yeah.
Okay.
But the beginning was.
Do they have questions over at Porter?
Thank you.
Questions?
Sure.
Hello, Porter.
No, everyone left. We have no more questions here.
Okay, there, I got a couple of indicators. So if you get more than one, if you select them all, that's the key. If you can get them selected, then you can turn them all off at once by choosing Ignore Error. But if you can't select them all at once, then it's going to be kind of...
When you get the green arrow, what is that telling you, and what's the reaction?
The green triangle?
Green triangle, yes.
That is an error indicator. And I look at them, although there are a couple of exceptions to this, as a soft error indicator, as opposed to something like this. If I have a formula and I put in something like, something like that, trying to facilitate an error here. No, I didn't want help. If I have something in the cell that says like pound NA or pound value or pound ref, that's a hard error. It's really visible. It's easy to see. It's sometimes easy to fix. These are soft errors, and what they indicate is any one of those errors that we looked at a minute ago, which you can get at by going to Excel Options and Formulas. These guys, like inconsistent calculated column formula in a table. This one, I don't know that it's really important, but if you have years in your dates as 2 digits, it'll give you a warning message that that's happening. Numbers formatted as text or stored as text is another one. So any of these will give you that, if the conditions are met, will give you one of these green indicators. So it's really a warning or a soft error that then you decide whether you want to act on it or not.
When you select and ignore, it ignores it just for that time on this sheet.
Correct. And and not even in the sheet, for those cells that you selected when you turned them off.
Questions for it?
I think they're gone. They're at the beach. They're at the beach already.
I had a cafe earlier with it.
What else?
Every time I go to one of these classes, I get all these little keyboard shortcuts and how to build
That's what I was gonna ask.
all those things. They're
Got keyboard shortcuts.
so helpful to have.
Good question. Well, here's the holy grail for you then. This alone is worth the price of admission today. If you go to Help, and you can get there pressing F1 or clicking on the little blue question mark. See if I can get this over here. And this works in all Office applications, PowerPoint, Word, Outlook. When you get the search box, type in the name of the application, like in this case Excel, and then type in keyboard space shortcut. That seems to, I mean, for years I've been teaching this, and that seems to universally work so far until Microsoft finds out that I'm doing it. Then they'll disable it, I'm sure. But I'm going to press enter there, and in this case it's coming up as the top article. Keyboard shortcuts in Excel 2010. There's usually a bunch of other stuff, and sometimes they have videos. This is the one I want, though. So if you remember those constants, the name of the application, be it Excel, Word, PowerPoint, or whatever, and then keyboard shortcut, it'll bring you to this place. And this is actually a list of all of the shortcuts that are, at least, that Microsoft acknowledges in Excel. Unfortunately, though, like let's say I wanted to know the shortcut to select all of the cells that have comments in them. That could take me a long time to find them because I don't know if it begins with control or function key. So here's the secret to using this. You press Control F will bring up the Find dialog box, and then I type in comments, and look at that. It selects them already and highlights them, so it shows that Control Shift O selects all cells that contain comments. So I found that almost instantly. Whereas if I didn't use the Find box, it's almost worthless to have this much information.
So is it possible to print this?
Yeah, I think in fact, there it is.
Right there.
Okay.
What's really annoying about this, though, is that it's not possible to put your own highlights on it and like have bookmarks. Microsoft just figured it would be too much of a good thing, so they didn't offer that.
Like all this text, you copy it, you paste it into a new Excel sheet.
I've done that. And yeah, you can take the junk out or paste special values only. Yeah. What else?
At one point, you described a way to look at arguments using Control A,
Mm-hmm.
and then you mentioned a second way, and I missed that.
Oh, and the second way is important. Glad you asked that. After you've typed in a formula like this, you can't use Control A to get to the function arguments dialog box. It has another purpose. The only time you can use Control A is when you just have entered the function name itself. So what do you do in other situations? Well, you make sure you have a cell with a function in it, and then you click this guy right here. This is the insert function command, and it will bring up the function arguments dialog box. Mm-hmm. By the way, this also links directly to help. So if it's a complex function and you want to read more about these arguments and or see examples of it being used, Microsoft, to its credit, has done a pretty good job on help. So this is a good place, a fast path to get there for your particular function. Any others?
I think we're good.
All right. Well, thanks for coming.
Thank you.